We're going to look at a big news story from Chicago now and the journalism that went into breaking that story. When Laquan McDonald, a black teenager, was shot dead by a police officer more than a year ago, the police report said that the officer was acting in self-defense. And many news outlets covering the story went along with that account. However, the killing had been filmed on a police dashboard camera that the department did not want released. It showed a white officer shooting McDonald 16 times, emptying his gun as the young man was walking away. After being tipped off by a city official about the video's existence, a group of independent journalists, lawyers, and activists who were low on funding but high on determination filed a successful lawsuit to get that video released. When the video came out, it provoked a public outcry and a political firestorm. The Listening Post's Marcela Pizarro now on the makeshift journalistic coalition that managed to succeed where Chicago's mainstream media had failed in getting the truth out, getting the story.
Brandon Smith, a journalist who makes a living by doing a bit of cab driving on the side, and who just broke a story that has put the Chicago police, the mayor, and post-racial America in the dock. Because it was Smith, working alongside activists and lawyers, who filed a successful lawsuit to get a video released under what is known as the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act.
If we don't get it, shut it down!
Video that the police wanted buried, visual evidence that Chicago teenager Laquan McDonald was shot not once, but 16 times, the entire contents of a semi-automatic, despite the fact he was walking away, and proof that police lied about his death.
The video was denied to a bunch of news organizations, and a friend of mine who's a lawyer knew this activist, William, and this friend got in touch with me and said, hey, this activist wants to know if you could help him get this video out.
I told multiple reporters and journalists before Brandon. Brandon was the one that took the initiative to look into it deep more and filed a FOIA request. We need more journalists like him that once, members of the African American community come with information like this, they will respect it to look more into it. You know what I mean?
Smith was not the only one to file a FOIA. 15 other media outlets did the same. Police argued releasing the video would harm the investigation. Mainstream outlets chose to push no further.
Video aren't just given out freely. The city, the state, every sort of local entity, they all get away with these things by saying it's under investigation. We could request the video all we wanted. It really comes down to, are you willing to sue to get it?
There are something on the order of 40 to 50 police shootings a year in Chicago, and routinely they are reported the same way. It's like a recipe, quote unquote, police involved shooting in this or that neighborhood, almost always an African American victim, and that's the end of the story. It evaporates.
Importantly, in Illinois, provision of FOIA law is that attorneys can demand payment from the government if they win their cases against the government. So that means that independents like me don't have to save up our money to pay a lawyer. So in this case, this attorney, Matt Topic, decided, hey, this is a good case. I think we can win it. Let's bring it against the city. And ultimately, we did win it.
Smith's lawsuit was the last chapter in a year-long effort to break this story. There was also Jamie KALVEN, director of the Invisible Institute that tracks police violence, working with lawyer Craig Futterman. They were the first with the autopsy reports showing 16 shots to McDonald's body. On November the 23rd, a judge ordered the video's release. But before they made the video public,
a veteran Chicago police officer has been charged with first-degree murder.
Officer Jason Van Dyke was charged 13 months after the shooting. When the video came out a few hours later, people saw why. Everyone, from the mayor to the police chief that the mayor then fired, had questions to answer. But Brandon Smith wasn't allowed into that press conference, apparently because he had no accreditation. He ended up tweeting questions to reporters inside on a case that is now under investigation by the US Federal Department of Justice.
It's been this kind of narrative phenomena of chipping away at the city's account of what had happened. The video becomes public, and the degree to which that has rocked the city and opened up possibilities that I think we could hardly have imagined for necessary police reform is, I mean, we're all kind of absorbing this moment.
The video and a lot of these things are kept out of reporters' hands, and their main reason is because it makes them have to answer uncomfortable questions. If we come to them with their questions, sometimes their best course of action is just to kind of stall until something else pops up in the 24-hour cycle, and then it's quickly forgotten.
Forgotten or conveniently glossed over? Because if you're a reporter working at the Chicago Tribune, the Sun-Times, CBS, NBC Chicago, there may be sources at City Hall or at the police department that you may want to preserve, access you don't want to compromise, which is why stories on local police are sometimes better told by journalists working outside of those mainstream institutions.
It's a really good question to ask of mainstream news organizations. Are you too close to your source? The idea being that reporters don't want to rock the boat so much because they kind of rely on those people to give them the information they need to make content.
It takes a tremendous amount of energy to move against that gravitational field. And I think the press generally has, without a lot of reflection on it, has found it easier just to publish the police blotter. And then you couple that with a kind of submerged racism. I think these are the most important stories in the city, judging by the allocation of resources and manpower by the major media, until it becomes, you know, a big story like Laquan McDonald has. That's not the case. There's not that institutional commitment to cover these issues.
Commitment and resources. In the past year, the Chicago Sun-Times said it would be cutting as much as 22% of its staff. The Tribune, 7%. The latest cutbacks as revenue continues to drop and circulation to decline. And then there's local TV affiliates in Chicago, media powerhouses that have no lack of on-screen diversity, but who are also slaves to the laws of the news market. Perhaps a slow-moving story like the McDonald case wasn't seen as a ratings winner.
I think it's a lot of journalists and reporters that do great work. Unfortunately, I think that maybe the producers or the owners of these networks are more caught up with the current events. This case with Laquan McDonald happened over a year ago. So I think that the mainstream media sometimes get too much caught up on what's happening right now.
I would always go back to the question of, what are your priorities? What do you care about? What are your values? What's your fundamental sense of vocation as a journalist? You know, we have a moment right now where there's a recognition in this sort of post-Ferguson era that these issues of economic inequality, radical structural inequalities enforced by patterns of police policies and practices and abuses, these are the central and defining issues in American life. And so I think the question for journalism is, you know, are we equal to that moment?
Brandon Smith has taken up that challenge. And he may well end up with a job and his own byline at one of the big papers in Chicago as a result. At which time, the question will become, will he still be able to? Will he be allowed to do the kind of journalism that got him there when he gets there?